you're actually not hungry at all. Like you're out of breath, you're tired. Last thing you just want to drink water. You don't want to eat food. So you exercise before you eat anything. Then that takes you till about 10. Have a coffee or something, and you could easily get to lunch before you eat a single thing.
Like a double macchiato or something like that mid-morning. You wouldn't need anything until about 2 o'clock.
Yeah, definitely. I need to get back to it. Obviously, since I returned from traveling about, I've completely lost the discipline, which is not what you want to do. But yeah, I need to get back.
The thing I learned, which is really important, and most people don't realize, is like bowl of rice, bowl of pasta, bread, something like that. It's that's just like a cake. You might as well have cake on the side of your potatoes or whatever.
Yeah, it's carbs.
Caroline, I've been back for a couple of weeks actually, but
carbs aren't necessarily bad. It's just that you have to understand you shouldn't eat huge amounts of it, and you should always eat it with protein and fibers and stuff like that. So mixed diet.
You don't need it. You don't eat carbs at all.
I don't know about that. Yeah, I think you need a bit. And you can alter carbs as well, by the way, folks. You can alter the biochemistry of it, so it doesn't actually give you that glycemic sort of spike or whatever. So coconut oil into rice, for instance, that apparently changes the chemical composition of it. It works with pasta as well. And reheating carbs as well. So in other words, do pasta, make a load of it, and then just steam it back again next day, and it changes it at a biochemical level. Okay, let's get on with it, folks. Let's firstly welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air. Talking about dieting, as you do when you get older, everybody. This is a normal thing when your mortality becomes more something you're looking to preserve. So welcome everybody. Great to see everyone here. December the 1st, would you believe it? It's episode 235. We're nearly at the home stretch. Today is going to be the first of a 4-part series that's going to see us to the end of the year. It's going to be a look back series. So we're going to basically look back on the year on various topics and just remind ourselves what are the main things that have happened this year, and just for us to kind of just have a retro on it together. And today we're going to be talking about AI, of course, huge topic in of itself, but we're going to get Martin Resident to try and crunch that down into digestible chunks. We're going to be talking about WorkTech investment as well, like where is the investment going on? We've seen Atomico release their European State of European Tech Funding. It's going to be in Brainfood next Sunday. Please do have a read of that. Very interesting and sobering news there as well. But we've got George LaRoque to tell us all about what his perspective is on this. And then we're going to finish off with talking about DEIB. So in other words, where have we gone with diversity and inclusion in 2023? Have we gone forward? Have we gone backwards? Have we stayed the same? Where are we with that, particularly in these like challenging economic times? Anyway, I need to firstly check on sound because someone's saying they can't hear me. So I just want to make sure that's not me at all. Can you hear me okay? Let me know in the chat whether the audio is fine, folks. I've got a slightly changed setup here, and I want to make sure that everything is okay. We should be live streaming this on LinkedIn. Let me just check if I am doing that. And if you're watching this on various LinkedIns, everyone's like live streaming. So thank you, Luke. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everybody, for pushing this out. If you can hear me okay in those places, then fantastic. Are we live streaming? I don't think we are. Yes, we are. Okay, great. It seems that we're out there. Let us know in the comments whether the audio is fine there also. Okay.
I can't hear you, by the way. I just know what you're saying because you say the same thing every week.
Don't say that, mate, because I actually can't hear myself. So it's like
I'm only kidding.
I'm confused. I don't know sort of whether I'm on or not. But yeah, folks, make sure everything's okay. Thank you, Joe. LinkedIn confirmation. Right, we need to thank our sponsors, of course. Without our sponsors, we cannot do this show. So thank you for our sponsors. Every week they're stepping in, making sure this show stays on the road. And this week, who is it? Oh my God, it's the one and only Poetry, Adam Gordon. How coincidental. You're right here. Tell us a lot about Poetry, mate.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you for allowing me to sponsor your wonderful show. Poetry is a recruiter enablement workspace, and it consists of tiles which allow you to access solutions for recruitment marketing, recruitment operations, recruiter learning, and other tools like Boolean strings and battle cards and many, many others. There's 40 solutions within the one workspace. The two things that we're trying to help you do are, number one, we're trying to help recruiters become wonderful marketers. And number two, and it's Poets Day today, wonderful. Thank you, Martin. And the number two thing we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate toggle tax. The amount of time that people spend going from one app to another, trying to get their tasks completed. There's over 70 different workflows and steps that you need to take in talent acquisition. And some companies have got 70 different technologies that they have to use for that. So sign up for free admin account at www.poetryhr.com. Have a look around and visualize a world where your recruiters are saving at least 31 minutes every day.
You know what? I really like that concept, toggle tax, because that's exactly what happens when you've got too many things flashing around in your screen. I mean, I do get it when people have actually got 2 or 3 screens on the go at the same time. And that, I think, is like one solution, but it kind of underlines the problem that we have because we're looking at too many dashboards generally. And that just stops us from focusing on the thing that we need to do now. And of course, that's not productivity. I read actually someone was talking about how multitasking is very similar to how animals behave in the wild, because they're also multitasking. They're eating food. They're also keeping an eye out for who's going to kill them. All kinds of things doing on. Always at a point of stress. They're never like contemplative, never doing introspection. Obviously, they never develop sort of high mental faculties as well. So yeah, I think we kind of regress back into that when we've got too many things flashing at us. Generally speaking, that's not healthy, mate.
I mean, Theo's just said he's got a natural inclination to toggle because of his ADHD. Like 99% of people who work in talent acquisition, I think, have got exactly the same. And so like being able to organize all your stuff in one workspace is something that's very popular. Another concept I just want to quickly mention is that of the dark cockpit. The dark cockpit's a really good one. So helicopter pilots, when you're building helicopters, you want to make sure that they're not distracted by anything in that cockpit other than what they need at that specific time. That's it. What we've got in recruitment is tabs open here, social networks here, things flashing all over the place. If a helicopter pilot was trying to do talent acquisition the way we typically do it, they'd crash their helicopter.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Cockpit.
Yeah, a dark cockpit is a good concept. Maybe one tab is all you need. I mean, just get that up there. And hopefully this is what the AI future is going to help us think about, because we'll have less dashboards, hopefully. We'll have less tools. I do suspect one of my forecasts for 2024 is that there will be rationalization in terms of tool usage for TA teams. In other words, companies will not only do it on a cost measure, but in other words, scrutinizing utilization of technologies that have been bought and purchased before they agree to renew. But also they're going to look at, okay, is there a singular tool that can help kind of do more of that? We know ATSs are expanding their capability, got products like yours coming into play. We've got AI kind of obviously maybe even replacing big chunks of work as well. So there's lots of things that might happen. Okay, we've whittled it along a bit too much. Let's review the newsletter real quick and then get our guests on to review the year. Did you read the newsletter last week, Adam? And if so, what was interesting, man?
Yeah, I did. So the first thing is, I'm sorry, I was on LinkedIn at the same time. I was on LinkedIn at the same time as Crowdcast, and so I heard you talking and then talking again. Right, ignore me.
Right, yeah,
this is like mental. Okay, so I was watching Brainfood live on LinkedIn, by the way. I wasn't just on LinkedIn doing stuff. Right, the first one, George Mack. He's a guy that I think you follow on Twitter. I've seen him a few times from things that you've tweeted. And he put together a tweet series about the traits of high agency people. High agency means you're in control. You've taken control of your life, basically. And I really like some of the concepts in here. So they were weird teenage hobbies, I'm not really sure, but I mean, I guess like swimming against the tide is the point in that, like doing things that other people don't do. Yeah, fine, good. When you when you meet that person, you leave feeling more upbeat.
Yeah.
Question: would you call that person if you wanted to get out of jail? Do you think they could get you out of jail? And if they could, they're high agency. You can't predict what their opinion is going to be about a subject. I think that is really, really important, because the amount of sheeple we have today is ridiculous. Honestly, I said something to somebody the other day, and they said, "Oh, you probably believe in this and this and this as well." I was like, "No." You know, we categorize people far too much according to things like what they look like or one opinion they've got about one particular subject. Immigrant mentality, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think you need to be an immigrant to have that mentality, but the mentality is you're not just going to sit where you are. You're going to go to the place which is going to suit you best and is going to help you achieve whatever you want to achieve best. So I think that's a really good one. They send you niche content. The only thing I can think about that is that they learn, which is good. Other than that, I'm not really sure the point of that particular one. But one that means that your high agency is hung, that these people are mean to your face about you behind your back. And I know that you're nice about me behind my back, despite being really horrible to me as a, one-to-one.
I'm not really horrible, mate. I'm just being honest. But yeah, I mean, it's like it's like repartee, isn't it? I mean, I think most people recognize it's like a high repartee.
Yes.
But yeah, I thought that was really good. I do agree with the analysis that the weird teenage hobbies is a bit cliched, but the other ones I really liked. I like the ones which is, the concept, who would you call that would solve like a major problem that you had? Like, is there a person you would actually call to do that? That's not to say that person's a better person or a better friend or whatever, but there's someone who might be able to pull strings to get shit sorted. Yeah, that's a high agency person. Makes things happen. And I like my second favorite is again that you can't predict the thinking, because I've been lambasted as being conspiracy theorist and all this type of stuff. It's like, you know what, not really, but I totally understand that some people like to have more conventional views on every topic, and there's if you think about all of the myriad of values and positions you can take on the world, there's kind of like what the middle ground is. And sometimes that middle ground is kind of clearly signaled, if you like, to say this is what we endorse. This is the official endorsed view. And whilst there's no point in being a contrarian for the sake of it, sometimes you have to understand that, maybe the people aren't giving you all the information you need in order to make that decision. And perhaps they've got a vested interest in you, or like being, going with the flow, because that's a management issue more than anything else. It's not any desire to really get to the bottom of things.
I feel like this is more pronounced in the United States than it is anywhere else. The concept of, if you believe one thing, then you definitely believe these other 5 things as well, because of the polarized media. If you are anti-abortion or you're anti-vaccination, then everybody expects a lot of other things that you believe. Yeah,
it's predictable. What a lot of this is, a lot of these like ideological commitments are just like tribal signaling, in my view. In other words, I don't think people necessarily strongly have investigated these views, but they'll just say, oh, my group generally says this, therefore I need to say it also in order to signal my belonging to this group, and my opposition to the other group. And have you actually considered the idea in its own merits or not? That's why I think you get these ideas clustering together. I wonder whether it actually happens in recruiting. Actually, are there certain ideologies that cluster together without deep analysis of them or without any due diligence? Maybe so. Who knows? Anyway, worth reading that tweet. Let's get another one in before we get our guests in, dude.
Okay, so I enjoyed your poll about why do you reckon Sam Altman was fired? It was quite interesting.
All wrong.
Well, it was all wrong, of course. Yeah. Well, we don't know whether it was wrong or not. I don't think anybody knows the actual details on it. But what I wanted to comment on this is, I'm sure there's people here who know of examples of where this has happened before, that literally the employees have gone, we're not having this. We're all leaving unless you bring him back. I mean, it's the sort of thing you hear about in like Gladiator or a Musketeers movie or something like that. I don't recall this scenario in a company before. It's probably happened. I think it's nearly happened with Apple. I think it nearly happened the first time when Steve Jobs left Apple. I think there was a lot of people very upset about that. But I mean, that's remarkable. The cult of personality in there is really remarkable.
Yeah, the cult of personality, but also self-interest, mate. Because all of those employees will have a significant equity share in OpenAI, and if OpenAI collapses as a result of enough people walking out, and you know, joining Sam Altman's next thing, let's say, then you know all the equity goes to zero. So I think it's not only just maybe I do think his charisma has brought along a lot of the talent. He was responsible for a lot of the recruitment, so there's a lot of, you know, loyalty when the boss brings you in, so to say. But I think there's also very significant, you know what, I'm going to lose 10 million quid here if this goes down the way it seems to have gone down. So we're either all striking together to get him back. And that's what's happened. So yeah, all's well that ends well. Let's see what happens with OpenAI going forward. Okay, one more, mate, before we get out Martin on.
Okay, as with every week, it's hard to do one more. I was going to talk about Michael Blackley's like hiring a developer in 2023. Really interesting article about like that's part of the concept of building in public, right? For a startup, right. Is like just documenting this is what I've been doing. The other one I wanted to talk about was Ben Phillips's. He's just such a great. He just shares stuff that's brilliant. And the one about you know, if you create a video, all about repurposing content. You create a video, you can use the script from it, you can use stills from it, you can use captions from it, things like that. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about those. I'm going to talk about John Brooks's pricing article. Right, so John Brooks is a pricing specialist in recruiting, and he's published a thought piece about, I think it was based on some research. It was based on research, definitely, because there's stats in it, about how can recruitment agencies, you know, what's the current state of like differentiating through pricing? So a few interesting parts of it. The first is that recruitment companies seem to place an 8.4 score on the value they think they're delivering, whereas their clients place an average score of 6.7 on that. So the value that they're bringing is not, there's a misalignment there, which is quite interesting. Second thing is recruiters who see themselves as very different to their competitors are seemingly 7.5% more confident on pricing negotiations. I mean, 7.5% doesn't sound like a huge amount, but like, you know, law of marginal gains and everything, you're going to succeed better if you can see yourself as very different. The difference between being able to get exclusivity on permanent versus on temp hiring is recruiting is nothing. There's no different. Clients negotiate 38% more on perm fees than they do on temp fees. I wonder if that's because psychologically they think about the temp fees as going to the actual worker rather than going to the supplier.
Yeah, it's individual. Yeah, I totally get that.
4.4, right. Is it easy to win exclusivity? Is it easy to win exclusivity? Got 4.4 out of 10, as in no, not. Is it easy to win a retainer? Got 3.4 out of 10. So nobody thinks that it's easy to get any of these things. And then the biggest challenge was, which I just don't feel like it should be a challenge. Recruitment companies should have a lot more imagination than this. But the biggest challenge to winning in the market is differentiation. Like nearly 30%, I think it was, said that was their biggest problem, was how to stand out versus the competition. In fact, the competition itself was about another 25% or something. So between those two, it was like 50% or more than 50%. Yeah. How to differentiate and competition was the two biggest things.
And you know what? I think that was my biggest takeaway from that bit of research. And by the way, it's really worth. It's also a great example of how you can do research in a very low, small samples. So all John did was speak to about 60 recruitment agency owners, I think, something like this. Decent enough sample, you know, what do they all say? And it turned out that actually companies that thought of themselves, they deeply felt that they were different from their competition, had more confidence in negotiating better rates. Whereas if you kind of think, you know what, we're kind of just doing the same thing, then you know you're weak on that value prop. So there's two things there. You could either hypnotize yourself to think you're totally different, so you change your mentality, or change your reality that you do provide a different service. Can you do something that is genuinely different, either in terms of delivery of candidates, or how you deliver those candidates, or how you deliver the service? I think recruitment agencies are going to get more technical as time goes on in order to differentiate. So in other words, they'll be able to, they'll start tooling up to be able to say, look, we put candidates through this process, we do this type of testing, we do all of this type of thing in order to then present a differentiated case to their customer base. So you know, it's not about us emailing out CVs anymore and like hustling through. That game is just going to be increasingly tougher to work on.
I agree. I think it's inevitable that it's going to be easier for them to differentiate as they're forced into adopting more innovative service models and into adopting more tech-enabled services.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Any agency owners watching this, let me know whether you have any plans to differentiate your services in 2024. Like, are you going to compete in some different way? Are you going to offer, you know, a new wrinkle in terms of how you actually deliver your services? Anyway, let's get Martin Redstone on. He's been waiting patiently, and he may have actually even done some work for us. I hope he hasn't. But I've asked Martin to do the impossible, which is to crunch down what's happened in AI this year in 15 minutes. Let's see if we can do it. So, folks, we are going to do a retro on AI. Let me know in the comments there. You know, what's your one big takeaway from artificial intelligence this year? And by the way, I think the anniversary of ChatGPT was only a couple of days ago, so it is actually
yesterday.
12 months. Yeah. Was it yesterday, Martin? Brilliant.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's very, very, very timely, very relevant. Okay, so I think most people know Martin Redstone, but for folks who don't, can you quickly introduce yourself, Martin? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Hung. Good to see you, and also good to see you back on the show, Adam, as well. My name's Martin Redstone. I have been in the recruitment industry for the last 18 years, but for the last 6 years, I've been all about conversational AI in recruitment. And obviously over the last 12 months, that's kind of flitted a little bit more into generative AI. But yeah, I work with recruiters, both in-house and recruitment businesses, on implementing conversational and generative AI and upskilling them in conversational and generative AI as well.
Yeah, and I understand that's like a very healthy market for you these days, Martin. So, you know, it's fantastic to see that people are taking it seriously and starting to operationalize some of this technology that we're seeing. So, Martin, I did ask you kind of an impossible task when we had lunch the other day to say, okay, you know, can we timeline this? Like, what are the big moments? You know, if we think about, you know, ChatGPT being the big bang, like what other things have happened in AI this year, and particularly AI with recruitment? I mean, AI generally, but also AI in recruiting. So can you give us a quick timeline on these major events? How do you see the year? Oh, we've even got
absolutely. You asked me to prepare something. Obviously,
Mate, I didn't expect a slideshow, but we've got a bonus here, folks.
Well, it's not a slideshow. It's a timeline. It's a timeline. So I know I've pretty much got about 3 minutes to go through this because obviously you two waffling on right at the beginning takes up half the show. So yeah, I mean, look, literally yesterday was the first year anniversary of the launch of ChatGPT. Apart from that, nothing really much has happened over the last 12 months, and that's the end of my presentation. No, I mean, look, you know, 5 weeks to 1 million users, not even, sorry, 1 week to 5 days to 1 million users, 5 weeks to 100 million users. But then February the 1st, the plus version of ChatGPT launched because ultimately everybody was complaining, especially over here in Europe, that as soon as the US came online in the afternoon, we couldn't access ChatGPT. So that launched there to give us kind of access to faster servers and priority, etc., etc. Thanks, Adam. It was actually myself and a bit of Canva. Yeah, and then obviously at the same time, going back into the recruitment world, we started seeing use cases for generative AI appearing in recruitment. MetaView launched their first generative AI product, which was their AI Notes, on the same day that ChatGPT Plus launched. March was just a crazy busy month. The API for ChatGPT launched, GPT-4, which, if you remember all of the rumors that were going around about GPT-4 at the time, which was it's going to be AGI, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, but actually it's just, you know, a more souped up version of 3.5 ultimately. But then obviously later in the year we were able to add kind of multimodality onto that. Obviously in March we had GPT-4. We had Anthropic launch Claude, which is, you know, a very close competitor of ChatGPT now. We also saw Google launch Bard as well in March. And then again on the recruitment side, Beamery launched their Talent GPT product as well. And then at the end of the March, you know, the world kind of imploded because Italy banned ChatGPT, and everybody said, right, that's it, that's the end of ChatGPT. It's got major issues from a data privacy perspective. The whole of Europe is going to ban it.
Quick pause, Martin.
Sure.
So GPT, sort of ChatGPT's API launching basically unlocks AI for a lot of recruitment providers, isn't it? It kind of creates an opportunity for almost anybody to basically build a GPT wrapper, I guess, something to wrap around the AI that OpenAI have built.
Yes and no. So there was an API into GPT beforehand, which is why MetaView were able to launch their generative AI product before the ChatGPT API. But that was the ChatGPT API was the bit that really commoditized AI, basically, and as you said, enabled so many people to create wrappers. We saw kind of PDF, chat with your PDFs. We saw lots of different applications coming out really quickly post ChatGPT API launch. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as we move through April, Phenom launched their X Plus. Adam,
why did they not get? Why have they not been shut down by Elon Musk yet? We're calling it X.
I think X happened after X, or Twitter happened after Phenom.
Phenom's not shutting Twitter down, is it?
No. I think it's a product called X. I don't know. I mean, Elon just probably has a GFY answer to that now after the interview the other day. So it's it's basically a standard response to everything now. But yes, I think it's very far down in his priorities behind, you know, Disney and Universal and people like that. And then yeah, hallelujah, end of April, 1 month later, ChatGPT returns to Italy. The world can breathe a sigh of relief. Europe is not going to shut down ChatGPT. Not much happened across kind of May through to July. We saw plugins, obviously, which were going to be the next big thing. You know, the app store of generative AI come to ChatGPT Plus, as well as access to the internet, which was closed down very quickly after that. But then July, that's July the 22nd, not the year. ChatGPT then launched custom instructions. Now, this started giving us the ability to start personalizing the experience with ChatGPT a little bit more, and that kind of started leading us towards the thought process around how can I structure ChatGPT in my own way. Just, you know, kind of like small little plug for my training stuff. But then we had Enterprise in August launch. So finally, ChatGPT was being used very much by the individuals, and now a business could buy an enterprise license for ChatGPT. That also came with things like privacy and security features that they don't have in the consumer version. So really started to enable businesses to take more advantage of ChatGPT. And then yeah, mid-September, we finally got access back again to the internet through ChatGPT, which was great. And then towards the end of it, this multimodal version of ChatGPT that we were promised back in March with the launch of GPT-4 became a thing. We were able to import images, ask questions, and prompt on those images, and the same with voice as well. Now, the last couple of months have just been super exciting, as far as I'm concerned. From a recruitment perspective, October saw the launch of probably the most popular candidate-focused generative AI product, which was AI Apply. I know that this is going to be a big conversation moving forward in our industry regarding the candidate being AI powered now. But that was kind of the significant event, the launch on Product Hunt, and then, everyone getting super excited about having a platform to generate CVs and cover letters, but also to apply to a bazillion jobs all at the same time. And then we enter the roller coaster of November, absolute and utter roller coaster of a month, which I could have probably filled the whole timeline. So I've kind of condensed it down as much as possible. I've not talked about the boardroom antics of ChatGPT because of OpenAI, because it just doesn't affect us, as we've seen, really. It was a weekend of soap operas. But yeah, early in November, we obviously had the Dev Day, OpenAI's first developer day, which brought about the debut of GPTs. So I mentioned about custom instructions, the starting point of being able to personalize ChatGPT. This was it. This was our ability to now create our own custom ChatGPT and be able to build a conversation that we could go back to time and time again and repeat and use with its own instructions and its own training data. But then straight away after that, nobody could use ChatGPT because we had massive outages caused by a DDoS attack that happened the day after Dev Day. And then a week later, because there was such a massive uptake in Plus subscriptions because of GPTs, ChatGPT halted the ability to create a new subscription for GPT Plus. Moving into later November, we had then again kind of more of an HR use case rather than recruitment, but Josh Bursin launched his product Galileo, which is kind of the HR expert for every HR practitioner, which is GPT based piece of technology. And then 21st of November last week, Anthropic really took advantage of OpenAI's kind of chaos that was going on there and launched what is an absolutely superb product. Anthropic launched Claude 2.1. You could put a novel into there. It's got a massive window of tokenization. It's a fantastic product. If you're not using Claude, you should absolutely go and have a play with it. And then at the end of November, at the same time as all this chaos going on, OpenAI was still able to ship a product, and they released the voice version to everybody, including the free users. And after that, it's just here, there, and everywhere, little pieces of things. But those are kind of the big stories of the last 12 months from a generative AI perspective.
Fantastic stuff. Round of applause, digital round of applause for Martin Redston. What a wonderful timeline. I think that this is such a useful thing just to, again, I'm feeling the nostalgia, and it's only like 12 months down the road. I should not be feeling nostalgia for anything of that that's just gone through that type of time frame. But there's been such a density of activity in this space that it's really very useful to be able to just map that out and have a look-see. And of course, we had really great comments on the thread. Talking about legislation acts and stuff like this. Also, they can appear into an expanded view of that at some point. Loads of other things. I mean, probably it's an industry-wide effort to try and create a timeline to map it all down for us. Because of course, Microsoft have launched huge things. We've seen LinkedIn push out. I don't know when the AI Composer came out. That was certainly this year. The AI generated job ads and all that type of stuff. You could even do, there's loads of things.
I joked with you when, Amazon just launched Party Rock. I didn't even put in there, we talk about Elon Musk, but I didn't put in there Grok either. I mean, ultimately, as I said to you, Hung, when you asked me to put together, I said you could actually create, for every month you could create, a year's worth of timeline for just the amount that's been going on this year. And as a practitioner, and as a consultant in this area, I have to say it's been bloody hard keeping up with it. It's been really, really hard keeping up with it.
Yeah, it's hard to basically ever snapshot it, isn't it? I remember giving a talk on AI 4 weeks ago, and I don't think that talk can be used anymore. it's already out of date. It's like, please don't look at that, because it's no longer a good talk. So I think it's really difficult, but that's the pace of change that we've got, and it's an exhilarating ride. Give us a summary of all of that, Martin. Like, so basically, it's mainstreamed. We've got, as you say, it's also been commoditized at the software development level, and recruiters seem to be adopting it, right? So where are we with recruiter adoption of AI in your perspective, from the companies you're speaking with?
In all honesty, nobody I'm speaking with has got an enterprise agreement as yet, apart from some of the kind of bigger organizations. But it's still very much at the individual user level. And the vast majority of people are still experimenting, which is kind of why I ended up starting up some training stuff. It was just literally people asking me, because they were playing with it, they experimented with it, they didn't know how to get the most out of AI tools that were available to them from a consumer perspective that they could use in business. So I don't think that we are, even though probably almost 100% of people would have heard of it, 87% of people probably have tried it, I don't think there's that many people that feel as though they are confident enough to be using it at a really productive level just yet. I think people are still using it and using it well, but I don't think it's become part of our everyday productivity suite just yet. And I think with the launch of Copilot, certainly for people who are Microsoft users, that's going to expedite that no end. But yeah, I think next year is going to be a really, really important year for the adoption of AI tools, but also we talk about it enough for the adoption of AI tools from a recruiter and a candidate perspective.
Just for additional context on that, my co-founder, Mike Hughes, his teenage kids use ChatGPT or Bard before they use Google to find information. So, there is a big change in the way we're going to be doing things that's coming. And of course, it starts with people that age, and then it works up to people like your age, Hal.
Hey,
but I agree. No, I totally agree. I think this is the issue with, when we talk about, and I keep going on about it, when we talk about AI-powered candidates, is that we're seeing it in the younger generations first, because they are obviously going to be looking for tech-based support and augmentation for how they do things that they don't see as very high value. And so when we as kind of recruiters are trying to push back on it, we have to understand that we've got a whole new generation of people that are both kind of moving up into the workforce and are there in the workforce who are expecting to use these kind of tools. So we have to be prepared for it. And you're right. And my wife's a teacher, she teaches teenagers, and absolutely, she's coming to me saying, we need to understand how to support our students with this as well.
Martin, you might have missed it. It was way up the chat, but George LaRoque asked, that like timelinogram thing that you did, do you publish that type of stuff somewhere? Where do you publish it?
I can do, yeah. So I've obviously created it for this show, but I will absolutely publish it on my weekly newsletter. Yep.
I was about to say, share the link to your newsletter, Martin. Everyone should subscribe to that if you're interested in keeping pace with AI as we go forward. And also that timeline will appear on that on next week's newsletter. Let's say, Martin, just bang it in there. And that'll be brilliant. Martin Redstone, wonderful to have your contribution as usual. Great to see you, man. Hopefully I'll catch up with you before the Christmas break. And yeah, we'll catch up soon, mate.
Looking forward to it. Cheers, guys.
It is remarkable how dominant this one issue has been in technology and even in our world of recruiting.
Dude, we could have even done our own research on the sort of volume of people who are subscribed to Brainfood Lives or registered on Brainfood Lives when we had ChatGPT in the title. It was like times 10 compared to any other topic. It was crazy level of interest and demand. And I think people like Martin, so valuable in the industry, sharing information, also providing that custom sort of training as well. Avail yourself to it. It's cheap as chips. Go on, avail yourself to it. But no, definitely empower yourself. One of the things I think TA teams have got to do is just get a handle on this now. Like, you've got to figure out how do we operationalize it throughout the team. because I think that next year, 2024, ain't going to be any easier in terms of the sort of pressure that TA teams are going to getting. And we need to basically be hyper efficient on it. Okay, we're going to flip over. We're going to bring George LaRoque on because we need to talk about sort of HR tech, WorkTech investment this year. Let's quickly jump to it. Oh, folks, before we do that, we always do this in the middle of every show. I know we're kind of like well late already, but we always want to make sure that we emerge from Brainfood Live with loads of connections, because I think the most valuable thing we can do on these conversations is to leave these conversations enriched with stronger networks. And the way to do that is fairly straightforward. Just grab your LinkedIn URL, bang it in the chat stream if you're watching this on Crowdcast. If you're watching this on any of the LinkedIns, just put it into one of the comment threads that wherever you're watching that channel, and then connect with everyone else who's doing the same. And then you're going to walk away with 20, 30, 40, 50 connections. That's going to boost you into 2024. Very important you get that done, folks. I am a believer that one of the ways in which human beings will kind of defend themselves a little bit, let's say, against AI is to have access to network intelligence, to be well networked with information. I mean, some of the stuff I was speaking to you about earlier today, Adam, about, I don't know anything about this, and you helped me with that. And it's like, that's hyper valuable, man. So that type of thing, everyone needs to get to. Anyway, we have Mr. George LaRoque, the ever young George LaRoque, getting younger is this some kind of AI filter here, George?
I've sent my digital twin. So
you know what? It's going to put pressure on all of us, isn't it? It's like if you start putting the AI filter on, you're never going to take it off, because reality is just going to keep receding, whereas the AI is just going to keep getting better. Anyway, George, again, everyone knows you, but let's introduce yourself. Who are you? What it is you do?
George LaRoque. I'm the founder at WorkTech, market analyst and advisory firm, oneworktech.com. We cover really the emerging categories in HR tech and work tech, and all of the growth capital that's coming into the space, align those trends for buyers, tech providers, and investors, and help everyone understand each other and make better buying, investment, or go-to-market decisions based on that.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And George, same question to you that I asked Martin. It's hard to summarize anything in a few words, but 2023, as we're coming towards the end of it, we'll probably have a little bit of a reflection as to how this compares to 2022, let's say, in the years before. What's your verdict on the investment that's gone into WorkTech this year?
I was only joking in the chat. I actually do have
what's happening slides here? Everyone's presenting stuff. This is great.
Because there's so much data behind this that I find a picture helps me tell the story. And the story for the year to date, we're at 4.5 billion in total global VC that's flowed into the space across 237 deals. So when you look at that chart, those big stacks are 21 and 22. 2022 was driven really by the first half, but those were anomalies. We're looking at 2018 to date, and prior to 2018, which was 4 billion, 2019 was about 5 billion. Prior to 2018, we had years like 1 billion, 1.2 billion, hundreds of millions. So from when you really step back, it looks like you take those anomalies out of the picture, and we're sort of on par with 2018, 2019, 2020. But just like the economy at the macro, it looks really good, but for a lot of different reasons, when you zoom in, it's kind of painful. It's painful to drop from those. A lot of people adjusted their mindset, adjusted their their attitude toward raising capital or investing to what became an anomaly from 2021 and 2022. And I would say the overall keywords are hesitancy, and everybody's cautiously optimistic. There is money flowing, but there are funds being created, and I chaired the first investor conference out at HR Tech just in October, and I'm hearing from several of the startups who presented there that they're they've generated deals coming out of that, or they've been connected to deals that they're about to close. So that's really exciting to hear. But on the overall level, things have slowed down. When we zoom in a little closer on, before I get into sort of quarter to quarter, how it's broken down, the category amounts from HCM to talent acquisition, we've seen this isn't unusual to see HCM, things like payroll, employers of records, benefits technology, et cetera, generating both bigger deals and bigger deal volume or dollar volume overall. Talent acquisition, we see 1.2 billion, which is what I know what this audience is most concerned about, over 86 deals. It was the same exact number of deals in talent acquisition year to date as HCM. So it's like twice the deal size going into HCM versus talent acquisition. Also not unusual. Looking back over the last 8 years, not unusual. The subcategories, I drilled down to over 60 subcategories. So it's not just about, saying talent acquisition doesn't help much, but when you drill in, job boards are perennially, marketplaces, I should say, marketplace job boards are always the top or in the top 2 or 3 categories. When I look annually over the last 10 years, the number 1 category, that surprises a lot of people because the death of the job board has been reported since I was 30 years old. So it's that was quite a while ago, but the marketplaces have evolved just as the technology has evolved. So it's not just about a simple display ad, but we've got programmatic technology, campaigns being driven, the traffic being shared across and around the industry. So it's and you can see how the rest of the top 10 or so subcategories break down. When I zoom back or zoom in on this year, I should say, we have seen quarter to quarter. We started at about $1 billion. 1.2 billion in Q1, dropped to $1 billion in Q2, 800 million in Q3. Now we've got a month left, and December is usually a pretty active month for deals coming into the light, and we're at about 425 million. Now, I always caution, a quarter does not make a trend, but 4 quarters, things have slowed down. But at the end of the year, again, macro, it's like the economy, or the U.S. economy, the jobs numbers are good, the inflation's going down, but people are still in a lot of pain. It's sort of like that with the VC investment. I don't know if you had any questions. I think one of the things fueling that pain is the fact that, when we do this market sizing, it's a growing market. There's a lot of adoption and a lot of entries to the market, a lot of startups flooding into the market. And if you came into the market in 2021 or 2022 and had an early raise at a inflated valuation, that's where you've run into trouble and where we hear a lot of the painful stories. So I'll pause for questions there.
I've got 2 questions. George, could you go back to the last slide, please?
I can certainly do that. Yeah.
So on the marketplace and job board money, is this mostly money that's going into supercharge established brands, or is it money that's going into startups and scale-ups?
That's a really good question. And when I look at the detail, the 2 of the biggest deals in talent acquisition, the 2 biggest deals of that 1.2 billion were 2 marketplaces, ShiftKey and ShiftMed, and they ate up about 500 million of the 1.2 billion. But then there's a cliff, and the rest of those deals range anywhere from, let me see if I have anything under a million. Yeah, precedes at 400K all the way up to the top is about 60 million. So yes, the numbers can skew in any category based on that. And this year we certainly saw that within talent acquisition. But if I were to equalize that, I think you'd see the numbers would look different in the big category chart, but the the relativity to the bars wouldn't look that different, right? Everybody's impacted by that same issue in every category.
Okay, thank you. The second question is, why is staffing so unpopular and starved of capital?
I don't know if I have all
66 million is like nothing.
Yeah. Now, granted, there could be, a lot of small deals that aren't on the radar that don't show up. I think we've got the best categorical breakdown. Our numbers are far bigger than in our category overall than what you'll see. We're capturing more than or we know how to categorize more than like a crunch book or a pitch book or a CB Insights. But I think there are a lot of smaller deals there. So, that's one important point to mention. Another, I think staffing's always been challenged in that way. You've got Bullhorn's still the biggest story, in the market. And I was running sales there for their first big raise from Highland Capital. And that was, you have to like read more on my LinkedIn profile to find Bullhorn on there. So, I don't know. I think there are some interesting things happening in staffing, though. I think, things like leveraging AI, like Squire, and I think Reload. So a lot of concepts that are leveraging AI for either, better data or better experience with customers, or sort of democratizing for smaller staffing firms. I think there's a lot happening. I wouldn't be surprised to see, Bullhorn now, for example, has a venture fund, a corporate fund. I think they'll shed light on a lot of interesting things happening there as well.
Yeah, and it's important to know, I think in the sidebar there, we're talking about staffing technology, right? In the sense of this is a category of software that is targeted towards third-party agencies, is what we're talking about, rather than staffing agencies per se. Wonderful stuff, George. Great to have that breakdown. I mean, I think you're right. Sometimes we just need to see it in front of us. But the key things I'm taking away from that is the expectations have been set at such a high level over the 21-22, as you mentioned, first part of 2022 period. That's had a shocking recorrection. All of us are kind of shocked by this, but we're well into the shock now. We're kind of 18 months in, and we're probably now kind of just need to gird our loins, so to speak, for the future, because that was, as you say, kind of an aberrant wave of optimism post-pandemic lockdown, and the potential future that we thought we might be seeing. In terms of I don't want to talk about the future, because actually, George, my plan is in January to bring you back to do a forecast for the year. So we'll talk about the future when the future is actually here.
I won't read those notes.
No, but in terms of the sort of the pain points, as you say, companies that have, I wouldn't say overraised, because they probably made the right decision to raise at that value at that time. Everyone thought it was going to be like a forever growth period. What's the prognosis for those folks? Is it just endless pain for them, or how do they best recover from having raised too much? I mean, I guess that's the situation now.
If they've got enough revenue to, and they've adjusted with, their bottom line with things like layoffs and controlled spending, and they're able to sort of eke along, they're waiting for, the market to turn and revenue to come back to where it was, but also the ability to, if capital's cheaper, there'll be more revenue flowing, and they're hoping to be able to do that. Some, though, you'll see exit at the only people making any money on the exit will be the investors, because, or they always get their money back at that level, or almost always. And so I think we've been, when I talk to folks on the buy and sell side in the M&A market, whether it's corp dev folks or private equity or banks or advisors there, I think a lot of the consolidation, a lot of the bigger exits, I think they've been while there have been some of that, it hasn't been as much as expected, and they're still expecting a little more. I think, anybody that raised that kind of, like packed their rocket full of that much fuel thinking they're going to IPO and go to the moon, better be, thinking of redesigning, away from a rocket, because that's not going to, the market doesn't look like it's going to support, in our space, it doesn't look like we're going to see any big IPOs, or if any, in the next year or so. So I think there's going to be a lot of pain. There are going to be some exits. There are a lot of companies I'm aware of that are out in that profile that you mentioned, Hung, that are looking for an exit, and just given the financial picture, triggers aren't being pulled on that. The good news on the M&A side is that my friends at Venero Capital Advisors, they gave us some data at the summit. I guess it was late October, and we saw valuations really drop in 2022 to where the average multiple was 4.7x and the median was 6.2. That doesn't sound good to any of the founders out there. In 2023, at that point last year, it had bumped back up. The average I think I flipped the average and median on this, the 4.7 and 6.2, but the average in 2023 for sure being 7x and the median being 8.1x. So we've kind of seen things moving. Those numbers are the kind of things we used to hear back in normal times, but they're moving back in the right direction. I don't have the latest update from them, but that's good news as well. And it's good news for anything happening there, and anything happening, if you think about also in the public markets, the valuations there, it's all relative, because every investor is looking at all of that data when they're looking at making an acquisition or an investment.
Yeah, very, very good. That's a great overview, George. We definitely need to take a deeper dive into this. But I think the picture is clear. But it's always good to get the information out there. A very, very tough time, obviously, for everyone in WorkTech. But there is deal flow, and it's promising to see that there is a sort of movement. And of course, we've seen some sort of M&A activity significantly this year. Maybe this is how it looks. Companies out there may be looking to pick up what may be considered to be a bargain. Interesting times for all founders. Thoughts with you. Let's again gird our loins. We're going to go again in 2024. George, we've got to move on. So thank you very much for joining us.
Sorry, just one quick clarification. There's a question about what are you talking about in terms of multiples? Multiples of what?
They've done enterprise value to revenue.
Yeah, it's all revenue. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Paul, I'm afraid we're going to have to not bring you on for this show. I really am sorry. The reason why is simply because we're running well out of time. We're already free. I want to bring you back, Paul, for the economy show towards the end of this series. I hope that's okay, man. I beg your pardon, but we're going to go straight to DE&I. This is going to be bringing in our friends Theo. Let's see if he's there. Main stage, him. And then we're going to bring Joe on as well. Might bring Luke on if he's up for it. I don't know whether he's in the right condition to come on screen, but perhaps if he is, I'm going to invite him anyway. Luke, if you're there and you want to come on, just click yes to this.
Well, what kind of condition are you expecting him to be in?
He could be in a bathrobe. I don't know.
All right. I thought he was primed to be on it. No. All right.
No, I mean, yeah. Some people are not ready. They haven't got the face.
Could be in the bath.
Yes. Yeah, that's a possibility. There she is. It's Joe Lockwood. Good to see you again.
Hey, how you doing? And hi, Adam. Haven't seen you for a while.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi, Joe.
Joe, for the folks who don't know you, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
In simple terms, I'm the inclusive culture expert, professional speaker, trainer, consultant, and all-round fabulous friend of Hung and the community.
Fantastic stuff. Great to see you back on the show, Joe. Let me ping the link for Joe there. We also have Theo Smith. Theo, wonderful to see you. Quickly intro yourself. Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, I'm Theo Smith, recruiter by trade, but I'm a neuro-inclusion advisor and author of the recent, last year award-winning book, Neurodiversity at Work.
Fantastic stuff, Theo. Nice to see you. And Luke, thanks for dropping in last minute, man. I mean, I just saw you on screen. I thought, you know what, it'd be good to get your angle on, the BAME side of things in terms of how diversity is going this year as well. So quickly introduce yourself. Who are you? What it is you do?
I'm Luke Davis, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm the COO of a B Corp certified diversifying consultancy called Diversifying Group.
Fantastic stuff. And by the way, congrats to your missus, by the way, who I understand is now a commander of the British Empire. That's crazy talk, man. So crazy news when I saw that.
So apparently she commands me a lot more now as well, which I think.
Yeah, well, I wonder whether the conjugal relationship changes as her public status increases. I should imagine
there's a lot more engagements, and I do a lot more staying at home and looking after things. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Okay, let's start with you actually, Luke, because I guess the reason why I wanted DEIB again, like all the topics today, we could do like a mega show on it, but we have to crunch it down into short time simply because of constraints of a schedule and so on. But you're all on here because there's different dimensions of diversity, isn't there? Even though I think we all care about having the concept of, look, we should be inclusive to everybody, and but we all have our own specialisms and our own communities we care about. So let's have a think about those independently for the time being. Luke, going to you first, can you kind of give us an overview of where you're seeing diversity in 2023 as far as it comes to ethnicity, diversity, and stuff like this?
So I never like to start things being slightly not positive, but I think 2023 there's been a shift, and obviously in our organisation, Cynthia, my wife, is a black woman, and we have a number of black employees. That if you'd asked them 2 or 3 years ago, like kind of what's the status for you at work at the moment, they'd have said, well, look, for the first time, people are open, people are listening, they're really looking to drive change. And I think a lot of that has carried on and continued. But I think what we've started to see is that bounce we had post George Floyd and post pandemic has shifted a bit. I think there's been a fair bit of pushback around a lot of initiatives, investment into projects. Generally, how people feel at work, I think, has gone down this year compared to previous years, sadly.
How would you? What's your theory on that? Is it purely economic strain, like companies are, cracking under the economic pressure, perhaps?
I think, and I'd love to see what Theo and Joe's thoughts are on what they're experiencing, but I think there's been a number of external factors. I think money is definitely a big part of it. I think companies are in survival mode, and I think when they're in survival mode, a lot of these important initiatives have just fallen by the wayside because they've got an existential crisis. I think also a lot of the stuff that's happening outside of work as well, a government that's not particularly friendly, and that's putting it lightly, around people that are different, I think it's had a really, really big impact. And I think also what happens externally in other countries, so geopolitical, I think all impacts people's day-to-day experiences. And then you throw in the rush to return to work, which has definitely had, I think, a negative impact for a lot of people from different communities as well. Put it all together, it's not a good mix.
Really interesting. Go ahead, Theo.
Just to throw in some stats there as well around exactly what Luke's talking about. So corporate America specifically, and big market, right, has been slashing D&I workers amid the backlash that we've now had to diversity programs. And the backlash has been basically around, they've not seen the evidence, right? Organizations have not seen the evidence. Also, the appetite has kind of waned a bit. Although organizations still put D&I at the top, actually, the reality is, in terms of putting people in key positions to drive it, that's dropped significantly. So it's an opportunity for us to improve moving forwards, right? Because we have some wounds to heal, but we're in a challenging situation. So just some data from September 2019 to September 2020, job postings for diversity, inclusion, belonging positions on Indeed rose by 56.3%, right? And a LinkedIn study found that chief diversity and inclusion officers positions grew by 168.9% from 2019 to 2022. So that's all the George Floyd stuff going boom, right? But a problem we've got now is Revelio Labs found 1 in 3 D&I professionals lost their roles over a 1-year period. That was 2022 up till December, right? So we've seen 1 in 3 jobs, and that was based on around 19-20% of jobs going anyway for non-D&I related roles. So probably a 10%, 13% increase on what you would expect. So I think that's having a significant impact, because a lot of the work that I do is directed by D&I leaders, right? Because they have a strategic view, an objective, an investment, but they need the expertise from the different areas, like Luke, myself, Joanne, for example. They need to bring that in, because they don't have that. They may have a particular line of experience, but the really good ones, you know, they're able to drive it strategically within organizations. So they then bring people like us in. So there is a cost to that, that is going to impact us. But there's also something significant that's happened this year, which is something that nobody's looking at, which is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive that came into play in January. And watch out next year. I know we're not getting there yet, but it's going to be big stuff. But it's already hit this year. This week, I was at an event for a global tech company presenting on neurodiversity. But what was their topic? Sustainability. Now, we could be remiss of us to think that sustainability is around, you know, the global warming, everything else. A core element of that CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, is around diverse talent. So I think there's going to be something in that we can start to lean on from Luke's perspective, my perspective, and Joanne and others, where that may be the opportunity that goes beyond this year.
Yeah, very good interjection there, Theo. Go to you, Joe. What's your experience has been this year compared to the years previously, as far as, you know, DEIB?
Well, let's be honest let's talk about me as a practitioner. My revenue's down this year. It's a lot harder. There's less budget out there. The opportunities that are out there, the rates are cut. I think there's a saturation in the market. Lots of DEI practitioners and professionals out there. Maybe everyone jumped on the bandwagon a couple of years ago, and now there's too many. Oh, it's never too many. We've all got a place. But I think I am seeing rates going lower. I am seeing a lot of focus this year on neurodiversity. So Theo, you're probably in hot demand at the moment. Whether that continues into next year, who knows? It's very trendy at the moment. And I was trendy a couple of years ago as a trans woman. Trans is no longer trendy. We've done trans, right? We've done ethnicity. We're now focusing on neurodiversity for this quarter. So I'd like to see what happens next year. I'm definitely seeing an uptick maybe in November, December. I've got more inquiries, more inbound stuff that I had. Maybe it was a real tumbleweed middle of the year. My Pride month is normally my biggest revenue month, and it was kind of what I would normally generate in a week. I was generating in the month, so I was about probably a quarter down in those core months for me. So yeah, there is a downtick in revenue there.
You mentioned a bunch of interesting things there, Joe. Give me a second, Theo. Firstly, thank you for being honest. You know, that's very refreshing and very, very strong of you. I think everyone can probably align with that. You know, 21, 22 record years. We've seen that huge sort of chart that George produced. All that money was potentially going into, you know, recruitment technology, consultancies, headcount, etc. That's been slashed. So we all know where we're at with things. And you mentioned also that the kind of the focus, if you like, the spotlight as to what type of diversity is the thing that people are driving towards seems to shift. So, you know, I'm not sure whether this is a good or bad thing. It seems to me maybe it's both, in the sense that, you know, there's more. We're deepening our understanding of diversity, if you like. There's more than just one thing. But perhaps a little bit more disquieting view might be it's a little bit more like bandwagony, in the sense of here's the latest thing. So it's almost like a trend that you need to attach yourself with. We've heard of the term pinkwashing before. We've heard of greenwashing before. We've heard blackwashing before. Is it so? Maybe it's a little bit of like the commitment's quite ephemeral, rather than.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
you know.
I avoid focusing on diversity as a kind of a word, as a demographic in those sort of terms. For me, it's all around culture. It's all around belonging. It's all around creating better environments for people to thrive. So that's what I talk about, and I think that fits into the well-being that is still core to many organisations. So yes, I think if we can move past talking about diversity and shift into creating cultures, creating into belongingness, and look at psychological safety and all the great things we know that create great working environments, then broader demographics. I hate the word diverse talent. I prefer broader demographics, or people from a variety of backgrounds will succeed and thrive in those environments.
Yeah.
Can I just say that, like everything that you've talked about in terms of 2023 has been a down year in the world of DEIB. I am minded of the concept of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I'm thinking about this in terms of a corporate organization, right? I'm also thinking about it in the context of every recruitment tech startup, in the world has probably not had the 2023 that they would have expected. But the difference is that DEIB is not something that should be switched off. That's not something that, it's not for Christmas. That's for, that's not a thing where, I've said in the chat here, it'd be interesting to see a list of the companies who had, more people focused on this, either as a leader or, in jobs, or were commissioning people like Joe and Theo to work with them, and who now don't, because that's just a list of companies who don't really care about this issue. It shouldn't be part of the Maslow's hierarchy of corporate needs.
They in-housed it. I mean, because maybe the maturity model of many organizations has progressed slightly. Maybe they've got more in-house expertise. Maybe they're not using practitioners. Budget gets cut. We know the first thing that gets cut is contingent workforce, is practitioners, is consultants. Maybe it's that reflection.
I don't think that's true though, Joe, because if you're looking at people who've been made redundant, as Theo says, a great deal of that has come from DE&I who are permanent employees. So what's happened there is that we've pushed people out. A lot of those folks, I think, have now become competitors in the consultancy space, because they've had to, oftentimes these tough times will create entrepreneurs, reluctant or otherwise. So so I don't think it's a case where internally we've got to the point where we don't need consultants. It's more, I think sadly it is a kind of a shift of priorities. It's like, okay, this was important when we had lots of money, but now it ain't so important because we got no money. That's the reality as I see it. Theo, thoughts on that?
So yeah, I just want to touch on a point that Joanne mentioned earlier, which is around the popularity of certain topics, and she's absolutely right. So neurodiversity, big topic, right? Boom, flashed year. This year, though, loads of negativity around it in the press. Tons. Loads of people saying ADHD, oversubscription, too many people are saying that ADHD. Loads of negativity around that, whereas actual fact, only 1 in 3 or 4 of those with a ADHD diagnosis are women, right? So we've got a huge swathe of women who never got a diagnosis, never got recognition, and are now searching for that. So that increase is down to a lack of diagnosis, not we now have overdiagnosis. But this is the problem, right? And we've seen this exactly what you talked about, that a topic becomes really big and interesting, and then people look at how they can attack it. That is the reality. It's the press that attack it. It's people that attack it. It's the non-believers, the non-acceptors. I'm like, whatever. You go and have your arguments over there in whichever social channel you want. I think what we need to focus on now is what is going to drive the next stage of change. And I think next year is going to be critical. And that's why I look at something, and recruiters, I think you need to be thinking about this. When I talk about this CSRD, this is going to be like GDPR, right? Where nobody did nothing about it. All of a sudden, every single organization is employing people to deal with the fact they've left it too late, and they're going to have fines. Like, so think about this, right? So any organization with a net turnover of 40 million, a balance sheet total of 20 million, or 250 employees on average over that financial year, 2 of those they have to meet, and they're going to have to meet this directive, right? Now, that's going to go from, what are the numbers here? It's significant. Actually, here we go. So it's expected that approximately 49,000 EU companies will be required to report sustainability information in the future, compared with the 11,000 companies at present. That is massive. And just because the UK, we're not sat directly in the EU, we will have EU subsidiaries, which means we will have to follow this. And because workforce diversity and respect for human rights are 2 core areas of that sustainability. So what I'm trying to say here is, 1, you're going to see recruiters, you're going to see a lot of unusual roles. that are going to be required to deliver on this. But I also think there's a huge opportunity for us to get budget that is aligned to this. So therefore, D&I initiatives that are being cut, we can look for the budget within our organisations that will come from this requirement that is going to become urgent as of January next year, but was already set in motion January of this year. So that's me just trying to see where the opportunity is from the D&I perspective, because organisations are saying they're still interested, but you're right, Joe, there's something happening where there's a gap, but I think we can meet that gap, and that's where the differentiator will be, and where the other D&I people will drop off eventually and go back in-house.
And I think what you said there, Theo, around the pushback, you'll find this with any change. Black Lives Matter, there was a pushback. Me Too movement, there's been a pushback. Trans movement, there's been a pushback. Neurodiversity has been a pushback. And it's where people feel their privilege or their status is being challenged. They feel like they've got to counteract it. I think in a climate with a government that is kind of right-leaning and away from people experiences, more into the business, trying to be hard and cold and business, more right-wing, I think we're seeing that follow through, and it's no longer trendy to do DEI stuff, is it?
You know what? I have to say, I mean, I think you understated the government's position on that, Joe.
I tried to be apolitical.
Yeah, I tell you what, it makes a difference. So as far as I see it, it looks like it's economic sort of challenge. Obviously, companies are under strain. That does mean cutbacks, and unfortunately, we've seen what the true priorities are. D&I has been shuffled down and shuffled out in many cases as a result of, sometimes legitimate business reasons, but we can see where the priority list is there. Secondly, we've had, I would say, the backlash not only in a sort of discourse, but from political sort of leadership. We've had politicians step up and say we're anti this, anti that, and it's like, or you know what I mean? It's the signalling sometimes becoming quite explicit. So obviously that gives the green light for other people to start realizing, you know what, maybe we want to go with what the government's saying, and then feel a bit more empowered, if you like, to regress back against these policies.
I think everybody who comes from a marginalised or underrepresented background would say they feel less safe now under this government. We look at what's going on around the debate around Rwanda, our Home Secretary, our Equalities Minister, the Chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. We see all these people playing this right-wing agenda, and people do feel less safe. They feel less safe. We see what's going on around the marches in London. The rhetoric around the policing of those marches, the anti-Semitism, the anti-Palestinian uprising discussions. We're pitting people against people, which is what right-wing governments try to do. They try to create these divisive wedge issues, and then say we're talking to you, and you. All these people feel mobilised because the government's attacking people who are their enemy.
Yeah, that's sobering. No, that's very sobering. And folks, I don't want to leave it on a tough note, but let's face facts. I think the first thing we've got to do is get our collective heads out of our anuses. There's no point in burying your head in the sand, in my view. It's a tough situation. And there are political forces that are stepping up and saying, okay, we're going to push this back. So it's time to make your voice heard on these things. Okay, listen, we gotta let it go. This has been a really long show, so thank you, Theo, thank you, Joe, for joining us. Great to see you both, and thanks everyone for hanging around. By the way, I know this is like going way beyond sort of normal time, but I think this is the pattern for these next sort of 3 shows, because we're going to pack as much in as we can, and inevitably there's more to talk about than we've got space to do it. So thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you. Next week we're going to be back. We're going to be talking about recruitment, advertising, and employer branding. Again, a massive show. What's happened in recruitment advertising this year, on SEO perspective, on job board perspective, programmatic advertising perspective. What are we doing in employer branding? All that kind of stuff. We've got an ensemble cast again. And again, it's going to be on-off type of roll on, roll off. Anyway, that's about it. Everyone's got to go. So have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you next time. Cool. Sorry, mate. I know I'm keeping you ages. So I hope that was all right.
It was, but it was quite exhausting, wasn't it? Because, I mean, we just covered so much in that show.
You know what? The problem I've got is that each one of these deserves its own show.
Yeah.
But then you'll be starting it in September, and then it's like, you know what? It's with a third of the year, it's a quarter of the year still to go. So we can't exactly. Maybe in future, what we need to do is increase the numbers of Brainfood lives. So we sprint at it. So we do a midweek show, and then you know what I mean. We've got more units to go at because we're not long enough for an hour.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, actually, coming up towards the end of the year, maybe we should do like 3 a week.
Yeah, just sprint through and say, listen, 1 week's worth of review. That would be quite cool, actually.
Could be half hour, bite sized, half hour, three like 4 half-hour shows in the course of the week, lunchtimes.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Anyway, we'll do that. All right, what are you doing this weekend? Anything interesting?
I'm going to a charity ball gala thing tomorrow night, and I don't want to go. I hate stuff like that.
Mate, I'm the same way. I've realized I'm going out every single day from now for the next 6 days, and like half of them are like black tie, cocktail dress, all this. And I'm thinking, I don't have the equipment. Like, literally, where is my tuxedo? I can't find it.
Wow.
So, you know,
you're going to St James. You're going to St James's on Thursday, aren't you? You're going to have to dress posh for that art gallery.
Not that posh. The dress code. The dress code is cocktail, which means slightly better than smart casual, but not a tuxedo. So thank God for that. No, it's not a cocktail dress. The dress code is as if you're drinking a cocktail. Although right now I don't even have anything, so a cocktail dress might have to do.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
Yeah. Catch you next week.
Take it easy, mate.
Bye.